Hi everyone. I just wanted to come tonight and tell you this weird thing that recently happened to me. Well, it happened to me when I was little, but I just kind of confirmed it with someone else that it happened to in the same house. It's just weird. It just freaks me out. When I was little, we had just my dad and his brother, who was a construction contractor. He built homes. We bought a 2-acre lot of land in this rural area in Massachusetts. My dad built a house. It was like a Cape Cod style house. The bedrooms were all upstairs. And at the time, there was just myself and my older brother, who's 2.5 years older than me. At night, I was afraid to stay alone in my room because after we moved in, I started seeing this black figure. Like, picture the room dark. The only lights coming in are like the moonlights or any nighttime light from outside. And picture, like, the room is really dark. All the lights are out. And picture something darker than the blackness walking through the door towards you. You see it. You see the figure. And it's blacker than the darkness in the room. And I would see it, and I thought it was my brother. You know, my older brother, like with a blanket over his head or something, like coming in and scaring me. Because he used to always do things to scare my girlfriends and I, like when we were out in the yard or something. So I screamed, and my parents came in the room, and they checked my brother's room, and he was in bed, asleep. This happened like all through my childhood. Then my younger brother was born, and time went on, and I kept seeing this. And like years later, when I got married and left the house, my younger brother, who I just talked about this like 2 weeks ago when he was here, and I never had any clue that he used to see it too, after my older brother moved out of the house and it was just him. And I was telling him about it, and I said, I remember in that house, I says, I don't know why, but that house always gave me the creeps. I says, because I used to, when I was little, like before you were even born, I would see this black figure come into my room at night. And whenever I would like look at it and scream and start calling Mom and Dad, it would go into my closet, into the right-hand side of my closet. It went deep in, like in the wall. Always the right-hand side. And I would always have my parents check the closet. Of course, they saw nothing. So my brother was here a couple of weeks ago, and he is now 52. And I was telling him about it, and he looked at me and he said, oh my God. He says, Colleen, this is really weird. I says, there was always this black figure. I always thought it was Gary with like this black cloak over him or something. And I says, it looked like somebody, like a cape or something over his head, its head, whatever it was. And I says, and it was just blackness. You could never see a face, but it was in a figure of a person. I says, and it would come right over to me. And by the time it got that close, I'd scream. And I says, and Mom and Dad would come running in. And he says, the same thing used to happen to me after you left. I says, what did you do? And he says, I'd scream. And, you know, my parents had split up since then. And it was just my younger brother and my dad living there. And he says, I'd scream. He says, and, you know, Dad would come in the room and say, you know, oh, you're just having a bad dream and blah, blah, blah. And he says, I got so that I would just pull the covers up over my head, you know, just stay there so I wouldn't see it. I says, I used to do the same thing. And I said, did you ever find out what it was? He said, no. And then he grew up and went off into the Navy and everything. And I never heard anything about it until just a couple of weeks ago. So my question to you guys is, and Susie Clancy, you may know, what was that? It was a black thing, blacker than the darkness of the room, so you could see the outline of it. And it would never touch me. It would just always come over near me and then go into the closet, unless I slept with the covers over my head all night. I stopped screaming when I saw it, because my parents would get mad because they'd say, oh, you're just having a bad dream. And my brother, the same thing. I don't know if the house was like on an old Indian burial ground. I don't know. But it was just really, really weird. Like, what does black matter in a room mean? Like this black. To this day, I don't know what it is. I don't have any clue. I'm not the type of person that believes in this stuff or anything like that. I don't dabble in, I mean, I like scary movies and stuff like that, but that's as far as it goes. Part of me believes in ghosts because I did have a weird thing that happened with my grandmother, and she came to me in a dream before I had kids. My husband and I, my ex-husband and I at the time, I was in my 20s, and I was trying to get pregnant, and I wanted a baby so bad. You know, we wanted to start a family, and my grandmother came to me in a dream, and she said, "Don't worry, Colleen. It's going to happen." And the following month, I missed my period. I went to the doctor and I was pregnant. And after I woke up from that dream, I was laying in bed and I was facing toward my husband and I felt a tap. I was awake at the time and I felt a tap on my back. And it was right after I had the dream about my grandmother. So it was almost like she was letting me know that, yeah, it was a dream, but I'm right here, you know. So that's the only thing that has ever happened to me as far as like believing in someone coming to me from the dead or wherever. But this other thing that was in my room when I was a little girl, I don't know what it is. And if anybody could give me any idea or tell me, my brother and I, that's what blew my mind because, you know, I had forgotten all about it. And then we were talking about when he was up here visiting and that house that we grew up in. And it just gave me the creeps when he started telling me that same story and described perfectly what it looked like and the feeling it gave him. It was always in that one room, never anywhere else. It's just weird. Oh, and I have one more story for you. And we used to have this neighbor when I lived on Cape Cod, and he was a retired FBI, and he was single. He had never been married, and he was in his 70s. And we knew him for a few years. He was like part of the family. He had always come up around supper time, and you know, would invite him to dinner. And he got a kick out of the kids. He loved my kids, and he was just like part of the family. And he lived 2 doors down from me. And he came over one day and he said, you know, Colleen, he says, I've been diagnosed with lung cancer. And this guy never smoked, which is weird. But anyways, he didn't last long after that. I think within a month he was gone. But during that time, I used to go down and check on him. And I'd, you know, bring him meals and stuff like that. And because I knew he wouldn't cook for himself. And his sister was taking care of his other brother who had Lou Gehrig's disease. So there was nobody really to take care of Jim. And anyways, I would go down and I'd just sit and talk to him. And then hospice started coming in and they kind of kept him drugged up. And I would just go there and sit there and hold his hand because he had nobody. And just hold his hand and say, Jim, you know, we love you. And, you know, it's okay to let go. You know, I know you're suffering. I know you're in pain. Let go. I'm right here. I'm holding your hand. And anyways, he passed away. He didn't pass away like right then when I was holding his hand. I had to go home and get my kids dinner and everything. And I knew that hospice was going to be coming in later on that evening. But he passed away during the night. The next day, his sister had called me to go down and turn the lights on and off like at night to make it look like somebody's home. And I used to bring my dog with me. I had this little Lhasa Apso at the time. And her name was Ginger, and she used to always go with me when I'd go to visit him, and she'd jump up in his lap, and he'd just get a kick out of it. Well, after he died in the house, Ginger would not go any further than the hallway down to where his bedroom was. She would stop. I couldn't even drag her down there with her collar. She just stopped. And I don't know if his spirit was still in the house, but you know how they say dogs have a sixth sense? And she just stopped in the hallway. Just dead stop. And she ran to the front door and started whining to get out. She'd never did this before. So that was another weird thing that happened. But anyways, the reason why I'm making this tonight is I just want to know what that black thing was. If anybody has any ideas, just put them in the comments down below and just let me know. I don't want to even think it was some kind of like demonic thing or, you know, that black figure that would come to me in the night. I don't want to think it was anything like that, but if you have any ideas, just let me know. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you all soon, and have a good night, guys. Bye.